Okay, we are back. We are back with Jen and Wendy on Harvey Hubbell Show and Tell. They're actually here. And we were talking about the magic, because this is like the behind the scenes stuff. You guys are the creators and telling us how you came up with this. So you guys have education in your bones. You guys have been educators for a while, but you're helping other educators, and you're helping parents, homeschooling parents. So we're talking about how you guys get inspired to make this stuff, but so how do you do this? I see you're talking to the cameras.
Yep.
Talk to me about how you create it, and you have other people help you
Nope.
create stuff?
As of right now, it's just us. It's just us, which is a lot. So I think we're eventually looking to expand and have some virtual assistants to help. But for right now, basically, I mean, we just get our ideas because we just are so passionate about the science of reading, and just, talking, like Wendy and I are both the same. We like hype each other up, and like I said, we just have so many ideas that we just have to share them with the world. And I think we were talking in the car and just talking about the importance for parents, because we've gotten a lot of messages from parents being like, I'm not sure what to do. Like, what my kid is reading 2 grades below grade level, and the school isn't saying that there's an issue, or they have him in this type of intervention, which is a lot of times intervention.
I got to stop you right there.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about before, about the internet and the wild west of the internet.
Right.
It's good and it's bad. So a long time ago, like when I can go back to Sam Orton's day, I can go back to my day, when we say, "Oh, don't worry, they'll catch up in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years." And so you've seen these things.
Wait to fail.
Come through. Wait to fail. And how does that make you feel? So now you guys have parents directly contacting you guys, and you tutor people.
Yes.
So
I do too.
You tutor people in your plethora of spare time.
Yes, in my spare time. Yes.
When you're not driving, when you're not
or working,
teaching,
or yes.
Going to
designing
lacrosse.
and doing the other stuff.
Yes.
I mean, what's with you guys? Can't you take a break?
We always say that we are big fat nerds, though, because honestly, like working with Wendy, it doesn't feel like work.
True.
Like yesterday, we worked
Yep.
for 3 hours straight,
Yeah.
or 4. Was it 3 hours or 4?
3
it was
hours in the
3 hours
morning,
straight,
yeah.
and we were like, "Oh my gosh, it's 3 hours we were working." And it's when you love what you do, it doesn't
Right.
always feel like work. And I feel like we're just super passionate about this.
And I think we complement each other really well. Like Jen definitely has strengths that I don't have, like the whole Instagram thing and the techie part of it. And I do a lot of the
codable
writing, and we have a blog that we, I'll write it. She always helps me edit it, but she does the visual images for the blog, and I do the text. And we work really well together. We have our strengths, and we play on it.
It takes a village. So, so what kind of number? How long have you been doing this for?
How long have I been
Have you guys been working?
or
How long you've evolved into the next thing? You retired and you went into the internet business. So how long?
We met in 2012,
Yep.
but we started informal literacy in 2015. So almost 10 years, 9
Nope.
years.
Yeah, we started by writing. We were going to write a book,
Yeah.
so we wrote a proposal for a book, and then it ended up we were writing this, and it was like trying to get published is so tricky, and that was when we were like, you know what, let's just try putting our stuff on Teachers Pay Teachers and see what it's all about.
Right.
And that's kind of, we switched gears, which is what you have to do when you're an entrepreneur. I think you kind of have to switch gears, and it worked for us.
So talk to me about Teachers Pay Teachers, because I hear a lot about that. I'm not a teacher.
That can be the Wild West too.
Oh, that's an understatement. You want to take that one, Wendy?
So, well, I know I wouldn't be where I am if it hadn't been for Jen, pushing the Teachers Pay Teachers platform. And so what was happening was we were creating our own materials for our students and the teachers in our building, because they were coming to us with lots of questions and we loved, as Jen said, we're big fat nerds, and we love talking about reading. And so we decided to take it to a bigger platform, which is where the blog started. But also we thought, well, these resources are working for our kids. We might as well make them available for other teachers. And but you have to be careful on Teachers Pay Teachers, because now everybody is about the science of reading. So
And
people
Instagram
can slap
too.
a label up and say science of reading, but unless you dig deeper, or look at the credentials of the people that are creating this material. You have to be careful. So it's just like shopping on Amazon. You still have to be careful about what you're buying. So
you walked right into exactly where I want to talk about the science of reading. That was like we talked about that. What is the science of reading? Remember, I told you I was going to ask you that question. This is hard because the way that I look at this stuff, and I know I always get in trouble. I'm going to say the wrong thing, but this is like kind of what we do, what you guys are doing. You're telling these stories on education and getting it to the educators so they can approach their kids a different way. I don't know if you know it, but we made a film on reading, the science of reading, and there's a couple other films made on it. It's like, it doesn't bother me that there's like 3 or 4 films written on the science of reading, because there's this thing called the Second World War, and there's a bunch of films on the Second World War too, because there's a lot of different things that have happened on that. But I think because all kids are different, school systems are different, they're all coming in, I think they're having different approaches. So what the heck is this thing called the science of reading, and why do we have to be cautious about it? How come it's not why is not one size fits all on a Band-Aid?
So, the science of reading is a body of evidence of over 50 years of research, and I can really get into the weeds. So if I start to get into the weeds, but so I think what's happening now that people are aware that there's a body of evidence and there is a right way to teach kids how to read, and it has to do with teaching the code. Reading is a code. The alphabetic system is a code. Why would you withhold that code from readers? Why would you tell them to guess? Look at the picture, think about what makes sense. Use the code first. That's what the science of reading is about, but it's also about phonemic awareness. It's also about vocabulary. It's also about background knowledge and comprehension. And that's where the balanced literacy people want to give the science of reading people a bad name, because we're not all about just phonics, and we never have been. So that is the first thing that people need to know, is that the science of reading is about the pillars of reading. Phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, comprehension, fluency, background knowledge. All of those things are involved in the science of reading. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that Jen and I have been talking about is the nuances, right? Yes. Science, by its very nature, evolves. It's not static. So one of our blog posts, listen, when cars were first invented, they started with a crank, Now we have keyless entry. Do we throw our hands up in the air and say, well, the crank didn't work, see? We shouldn't, I'm going back to the horse and buggy. We don't do that. We should not do that with the science of reading. We have to just keep getting better and better and better at it. That's how, I know you've talked about the pendulum swing before. That's how we avoid the pendulum swing, is when we commit to evolving with the science of reading. I can go on.
No, that's beautiful. That is really beautiful. That is really the argument right there in a nutshell. And he probably timed you, and we know how long you did that. That was very good.
And we just talk about it. You have to use that common sense approach, because when it was balanced literacy, Wendy and I were fighting the good fight, kind of for structured literacy and science of reading. But now it's like you even see stuff on Instagram or see stuff on Teachers Pay Teachers and thinking like, wait a second, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, we talk about, I don't know if you're familiar with leveled readers. Do you know what leveled readers are? So leveled readers are basically, it's text that's non-controlled. So it's anything that we pick up is non-controlled text, right? Leveled readers is in balanced literacy, they assigned like a level L book, but really there's not any reason why a level L is a level L. So it's very arbitrary. But essentially leveled readers are just non-controlled books. And what we talk about is, people are like, okay, so, leveled readers are bad, which, yes, you're not going to have a kid in kindergarten who only knows CBC read a non-controlled text that has words that they're not going to be able to decode, which has a lot of words that they're not going to be able to decode. With leveled readers, there's no control. But with decodable text, people say that, I want 100% decodable text. The world is not decodable. So kids need to be able to approach a word like an irregular word and read it and say, okay, wait a second, this might have a pattern I don't know yet, so I'm going to try to tap it out, I'm going to try to figure it out, or I'm going to have my teacher or adult help me out with it. So we kind of have to think about like 100% decodable, that doesn't really make sense either. So decodable texts are really helpful in helping emergent readers, but like there is a place for getting them a little uncomfortable, presenting them with words that they may not be familiar with, and having someone support them as they're moving on with it.
So this is a movable feast too. It's a movable target. And you know, like what I was saying, well, okay, enough about you, let's talk about me. So, you know, everybody, I say this probably almost every podcast, I probably shouldn't say it anymore, but you know, when I was a kid, I was left-handed, and they're not a neuroscientist, but a kindergarten teacher is like, well, we got to move them to right-handed because we have to conform everybody. And going to what you're saying, the body of evidence of all the information that's being put together over the last X amount of years, 50 years, we begin to know, oh, this is not good. You're not supposed to do this. You know, they're teaching me to read by color, which was, I don't know if you're familiar with that. Back
So like the overlays?
No, it was just red meant one sound, and blue meant another sound, and green means another sound.
Okay.
Which, going back, well, we have a code. Why don't you teach the kids the code? This is like teaching, you know, these. So you go through all this crazy stuff, and you say, oh, that doesn't work. And nobody, and then the kindergarten teacher, like, forget it, we're not, you know, the first grade teacher doesn't have as much of an information on what happened to Harvey. Harvey's in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. You know, I'm a total mess. I'm like three grades behind because I didn't get the foundations. So you're talking about the body of evidence. You're talking about the science of reading, but you know, you also have teachers pay teachers. You have Twitter. You have YouTube. You're talking about all these things. So it is the Wild West, and you're trying to find your people. You're trying to find your audience and find the right people. And now, what do we know the difference between when Harvey was little and when these little students are there? That each one of them is unique, and if they want to be left-handed, they're going to be left-handed, and they're going to be this dominant, this, and this. You know, they're going to have these various differences, and you pick it up and you work with them there. So I think that's why when parents are reaching out to you guys and saying, "Hey, what's happening here?" You know, the teachers might be being told to toe a line by a certain administration that they're working in, but once you get out there to the Wild West of the internet, then they meet characters like Thelma and Louise on the internet.
Absolutely.
So, hey, did you guys see Hopeville?
Not yet.
Not yet. No.
We're going to.
You going to?
Yes, absolutely.
We actually want to host. I want to find out, like, because I think they said something about us hosting. We got all excited about thinking about if we could host.
reach
Oh,
out.
wow, we'll host it. We can even put a little thing
We
in
would
here
love
right now
to.
saying that how they can host it. But yeah,
We
so
would
we can
love to
host
do
it,
that.
and
Because our friends are going to Bridgeport. I'm sure they come and see it again.
yep. Well, yeah, we're doing a bunch of like across Connecticut right
I
now.
think we should go. They should go to college. Should go to college campuses because that's where
Yes.
the root of.
Whichever colleges you guys want to go to. I mean,
I wonder if they would. I
there's
wonder if
certainly
they would allow
followings.
it.
There's certainly following to get people into it. So, okay, so I was going to ask you about Hopeville, but we can show you some stuff on that. Let's talk about where you guys are now. We've talked about where you guys are going. You know, it is the Wild West. But let's go back to the future.
Okay.
The next couple of years. Let's go back to there because I think we began to talk about it. But what I really want to think about is who your audience is, the educators. You got the parents. What about decision makers and policy makers? And you guys talked about having a screening. In the perfect world, you want to get these decision makers, these curriculum folks, these elected officials, these board of education people, these school superintendents. So if you could talk to them, which you guys kind of do in your way, but what would you say to decision makers? I mean, Wendy, you were just telling me all about.
Well, so I actually have talk to decision makers. In my previous school system, I put together a PowerPoint and I spoke with the assistant superintendent and the curriculum director to talk about the importance of getting the right materials into hands. And they actually did begin to move. I mean, it took a lot. It took a lot. But they got in foundations into they had foundations only in K1, and then they now have it in second and third grade. So that was like years of trying to get them to pay attention. And then I also spoke to my Board of Ed recently, and it's hard. It's hard because the Board of Ed, they're not reading specialists, and they are guided by the superintendent and the curriculum director. So when the curriculum director and the superintendent are saying, well, this program's okay, the Board of Ed tends to believe them. And it's hard, and it's going to take a lot of voices. And I know that in some school systems, many voices together have raised the awareness, and now school systems are starting to listen.
And what I just want to say is that it comes down to teacher knowledge and building teacher knowledge, which is kind of what we try to do with our blog, with our Instagram account, and with anything that we do, any presentations that we have, is building teacher knowledge. Because if you don't, you can't just adopt any program and assume that it's going to be carried out in the proper way. I mean, Foundations is a program, which is a great program. It's Wilson, it's made from Wilson, and we love Wilson, but it's only as good as the practitioner that's delivering the instruction. And so our whole preface is that we need to be building teacher knowledge. And if once they know what to do in certain situations, which is why our lesson plans, we guide the teachers and have, guidelines for analyzing, like this is what you should look for, like when you're giving a letter name and sound assessment, things that you I wouldn't have known until I've done it for as long as I have. So just building teacher knowledge, like we have to put money into building teacher knowledge, because if they're not behind it, or if they don't understand the why, then it's not going to translate to the students.
Well, so you're saying we have to invest in our kids and in our schools, and so we're going to go back, and I don't want to be a commercial for us, but I'll be a commercial for us, because we were talking about doing screenings, but and you were talking about educating the Board of Education, the school superintendents, and I know sometimes when the Board of Education comes in and watches some of our rough cuts or things like that, there's certain things they don't know. But being in a room full of people, in a kind, gentle room full of kind, gentle, empathetic teachers that are going to be able to have panel discussions and talk about it and come up with solutions of saying, hey, we just, the idea about making a film is we do all the research. We've spent X amount of years out there in the field. We've followed the stuff around. Once we're in a big room, you bring everybody together, a couple hundred people. We're always talking about, preaching to the choir. We all know who watches our stuff, and it's the same people. But we want to open it up to new people. We want to open up people who are going to be our friends. People who might be considered our enemies.
I just have, as you were talking, I had this one thought, and is part of the pushback that I felt I got from the Board of Ed, and also when I spoke with the curriculum director, and is the money that was spent in ineffective programs, and how do they then go back to the Board of Ed and say, yeah, we spent millions of dollars on this program and training our teachers, but it wasn't the right program. Like now they have to they have to admit their mistake, but they have to. So how do you get the movers and shakers to admit that they made that big financial mistake?
Okay, well, plastic is bad. We shouldn't be having. There's 5 big islands of plastic floating around the size of Texas out there in the ocean. The same thing. Well, I'm not going to admit that I made a bad decision. We all were, the data we were given. That's what we thought we should do.
Right.
So we have to. There has to be brave people like you guys and other heroes that are out there that say, hey, and you said it takes years. It takes years to make change, and maybe a couple of board members on the board step down and you say, you know, they have to have compassion, they have to have empathy, and say, hey, yeah, given the data we had, this is what we thought was going to do. We thought plastic was going to change the world. Instead, plastic's changing us. So we thought reading was going to change the world, but really, when it comes down to the science of reading, is your test scores. And can the kid go home and read to his parents in kindergarten, first grade? I mean, one of the things that the pandemic, where we write about the pandemic, I can tell you one thing right now: that pandemic was a blessing for the reading wars, because everybody sees, hey, my kid can't read, what's going on? So that changes all kinds of things.
Right.
And so I think that what you're saying is it's a good thing for everybody to cogitate on. Is, hey, we were wrong, but once you're wrong, it gives you an opportunity to right things. And many teachers have talked to me over the years of realizing, I think back in my first years of teaching, my second years of teaching, the kids I didn't get to, but the teachers have changed. So now we have to have the administrators change too, and they have to, and the administrators have to sit and think. I mean, there is this thing called school to prison pipeline. There is a thing about people who can't read sitting in prison.
Right.
So just looking at that data and talking about it, I think you want to do the best possible job you possibly can. So what would you tell young teachers that are in a system, and they're like, geez, the Board of Education, the school superintendents, they don't want to change things. How would you inspire those young teachers? What would you tell them to do?
That is a good question, because it takes courage to speak up to your administrators and say, this isn't working. And I think some of it comes with time and age, and I think that what would I say to a beginning teacher?
I think I would say don't give up. Like, keep learning as much as you can, building your knowledge base. And I think that, with us even, people were noticing that our kids were progressing, and it was like, oh, they were becoming readers. And it was kind of like, well, what are you doing to do that? And it's kind of like, you kind of have to spark that curiosity within your own school. You start within your school, right? And
find your people, right?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be other people who believe the same, that believe in the science of reading. I think that's a good point, that don't give up.
Don't give up.
And find your people. And there's strength in numbers.
And again, like, kind of places like social media could be bad, but it can be good for finding people that you can collaborate with if you don't have that within your own school system.
And the other thing I like what you said, which is the science of reading, is there's data. There's evidence that guess what? She's doing this in her classroom, and her kids are learning to read. So that alone is, once you begin to do it, and you can. So this is the answer for the young teachers. They can take what they find on the internet, which is the good stuff or the bad stuff. They have to vet it. They have to figure it out.
They have to know that.
They have to know it. They have to do it by educating themselves and saying, yeah, maybe, if the kids' reading scores are going up, it means the kids are learning to read. Call me crazy. So call me crazy. And we tried this last year, and we were doing it this way last year, and it wasn't working. We tried it this way. It's working. Yes, it takes time and being courageous, and then coming in and saying, look, the reason I got into education is because I want to change lives. I don't want to ruin lives here.
Right.
And that's what you have to take to the Board of Education. That's what you have to take to the school superintendent. That's when you have to find your friends and make the difference.
And I think too, you have to always question. And I think that that's what Wendy and I, that's kind of how it started. Like, this isn't working. Like, what are we doing? And question, even though everyone else is going one way, you have to question, even within the science of reading. I think this is like kind of a new twist, because within the science of reading, you have to question, does that make sense? Like, that we would only teach phonics? No, that does not make sense. You know, and like some people, like, there's just, you have to question and use research to inform your instruction. Because I feel like, if you're just going to be like, well, okay, it's this is the way that I learned how to do it, and I'm not going to change, you basically have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because, like, there were things, even since we've had our store, stuff has changed. So we changed our resources to reflect it. Blog posts, we look through and we're updating blog posts because, this information about sight words, new research has been introduced that we're going to tweak some things. And you just, like, yeah, maybe you liked it, but you can't hold fast to certain practices. Just know that, if better things come along, try them. And it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Okay, there's growth to be. That's our lobster
that's
story.
what it is,
Remember
right?
the lobster story? There's growth to be uncomfortable.
You
So,
have to.
okay, that's all great. What else do we need to know that we haven't talked about here?
Well, there was one thing I wanted to say. You were talking about so the nuances of the science of reading and the rigid thinking of of clinging tightly to something, that also causes the pendulum swing, right? So if you're only doing something and you're not growing, then it doesn't work. And then, we're going to throw everything away and go back the other way. And the other thing I did want to say too is when we were talking about data and how important data is to, reflect, are your kids learning? That's how we got our name, Informed Literacy, because we believe in assessing students, analyzing their performance and their strengths and needs, and then instructing to teach into their needs. So that we always are assessing, analyzing, instructing, and that is evident in all of our materials that we make and what the message that we get out to teachers, that data can be your best friend.
And so, in a way, when we're talking about the Wild West, you guys are those good guys, going back to the 70s TV show. You're showing the light to you're going through, taking it, does this pass all the tests? Does this, is this informed data?
Mm-hmm.
Is this good science of reading? Is this truly what it is? And you're taking that and using your measuring stick by seeing success on that. So I think that's an interesting thing, and there again, just a great tool that people can use when they're talking with you guys.
Yeah, you have to take your ego out of it and kind of just say, okay, so this wasn't working. We're going to try something else. This is what's cutting edge. Let's try it.
And never blame the students.
No.
Never. You have to be self-reflective. Not well, they didn't get it, and then just move on. There's a reason they didn't get it.
There's a reason they didn't get it.
Yep.
Well, I always consider you guys, educational ninjas. You don't know what's going to come walking in the door, and you have to be ready for anything.
Yep.
And I really appreciate what you just said. Don't blame the student on it, and the student is just a story. And I appreciate what you said. Having your fifth graders, you're looking at these things, but when you're the first grade teacher, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the person who pours the foundation for the house.
Yep.
And and that is a year where you have to say, how come they're not getting it? How do I get them to reach this? And that's where the science of literacy and the science of reading comes in as well.
Right.
Absolutely.
Anything else, ladies? Today, where we're here?
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thrilled
coming here
to be
today.
here.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, we're going to see each other a lot more because we're all Connecticut folk.
Absolutely.
All right. Much love and respect. And that is our episode for today. Am I right? I'm right.
All right.